structure, a belief structure that tells you it can sort out not only every inequality in your own life, but every inequality on the face of the earth. Has an attraction, doesn't it?
Attractive, yeah. What impact do you think social media has had on our politics broadly, but specifically on that point of view?
Well, social media has been deranging us, and we have to find a way to live reasonably with it. This goes into the category of things we all knew till yesterday. Let me give one quick example. Obviously, we can all obsess about things like Twitter. They definitely have a dementing effect because they encourage mob crowd mentality. And we know a lot about crowds. We know an awful lot about crowds. We know a lot about mobs. We didn't learn it from Twitter. We know, for instance, the way in which the mob seeks to find a victim or a scapegoat. Often, scapegoat guilty of the same thing that the mob has been guilty of itself in the past. But they can wash their guilt by finding the person who behaved in the bad way, knowing that they behaved in a similar way when no one was looking, but they weren't caught, and then you destroy that person. Now, we knew all this. But one of the things I point out in the madness of crowds is, I don't have some people, I've just turned 40. Some people of my age and generation talk about the snowflake generation. And there's something in it. There's definitely a sort of sensitivity that's crept in.
Do you agree with it?
Well, see, I think it's unfair. I think it's an unfair critique. I quote at one point in the book, there's a chapter I write on forgiveness, which is a really unpopular subject these days. I write in the chapter on forgiveness about a philosopher, Hannah Arendt, from the 1950s, an extraordinary woman. And she wrote in the 1950s an amazing essay where she says, the problem for us in the world as human beings has always been the problem of action in the world, because we never knew the consequence of action. And the problem for all of us as human beings is we can never undo what we do. We live in an unundoable world. You say something and you can't take it back. You make a mistake. You can never undo the mistake fully. Now, as Arendt says, what is the only answer to this we've ever had as a species? It is the mechanism of forgiveness. And it's not perfect, but it's the only thing we've ever had. Now, she says this in the 1950s. If action in the world was worrying then, today it is petrifying. And I blame no young person growing up in this world for being terrified of the consequence of words and actions. Because, first of all, a mistake can go round the world and will be with you forever. There are cases I give in the book, like the young girl in America who goes to her school prom and she wears a red Chinese-inspired dress and she takes a photo, a selfie beforehand and she puts it up on Instagram, hopes that some people will heart it. She's world famous within 12 hours. Everyone says, was the theme of the prom casual racism and cultural appropriation then? Can you imagine this? You're 17, 18, and the whole world is laughing at you. Who wouldn't learn a lesson from that? Like, just don't even wear the wrong thing. I understand that. But here's the thing. At the time that acting in the world has never been more perilous, our societies spend zero time even thinking about mechanisms of forgiveness. How do you undo a mistake? How does the Chinese prom dress girl ever undo the mistake? She can sidle away and hope the world forgets about her. Okay. Can she ever undo it? Now, I don't know exactly what the answer to it is, but I know we should be thinking about it. And I can't get people to focus on it. The terror of this in the online world is, what if that happens? And I have had so many communications. I've had that before that, but since then as well, from people who are not known, not famous, not ever written a book, and who something like that has happened to. And it is a dementing thing to happen to you. particularly if you have no response. And my own view on this is that we have to be more unforgiving of the perpetrators of such lies and more forgiving of the victims of such lies. And here's the thing. We will all make mistakes in our lives. Like, we will all say wrong things. We'll all think wrong things. We'll all try things out and then think, oh God, why did I do that? We'll all make mistakes in our personal relationships in our lives. And we should expect that. But to be forgiving of other people is also to ask to be treated in the same light yourself in due course, because it will happen to you. You will have need of that. And by the way, that's the case with the past as well. We have in our societies imbibed an incredibly unforgiving attitude toward the past. You know, our attitude today is, because we live after the past, we know better than it. There are some things we know more about. We know about penicillin now. It's not like our forebears were stupid because they didn't know about penicillin, or that we're better than them because of it. I don't know more than Plato because I know about antibiotics.
Very humble of you.
You know? And I don't mind admitting it. There you go. But we have this view that, particularly with historical figures, that we're better and wiser, and therefore we get to judge them. Now, this isn't to say that you don't make the point historically, you know, that was wrong in history, that we wouldn't do that now. But we should, I mean, this comes to the sort of thing of tearing down statues and eradicating texts from the past, and indeed disappearing people from the past if they didn't share the views that we have in 2019. And one of my rules is, consider that we are the same as everyone who went before in most ways. And that just as they did things which we look back at and think, what were they thinking? Assume we're doing some things like that too, and try to work out what they might be. Now, by the way, and also because that's to be forgiving to the past, they say, is to ask for forgiveness from our successors, because we know we'll need it too, or at least to be treated in a gentler light. And I give an example. I know this is going to be very controversial, but of all the subjects I tackle, the trans issue has been the one that's come furthest, fastest, and I think we know least about. And I explain really carefully in the chapter, and I think more in depth than I've seen anywhere else, what the bits of the claim are that are plausible and which the things are that we've got to be really careful about, like giving drugs to children, experimenting on children. And I give an example of this in this book at the opening of the trans chapter, which I know is going to be controversial, but it's really worth considering that it'll go into the box of what our successors say they did what. And it's the case of a Belgian man who was born a woman and in an all-male household, surrounded by brothers. Parents were clearly absolute shits. And it was obviously a horrible environment for her. And at some point in the teens, this girl thought that it might be better if she was a boy, and started taking hormones in her 20s, has several operations to become a man. They're not as successful as he wishes. There's serious scarring. And of course in Belgium there's euthanasia is available on the state. And after the third attempt to transform herself into a man, she gets depressed at the results and is killed on the state. Now, I would submit that the people who come after us will say, the Belgians did what in the 2010s? They did what? And they did it in the name of kindness? They tried to turn the woman into a man and then killed her?
How culpable do you think the tech companies are in this?
Again, very, very deep insight, powerful language that Douglas Murray is using, and I got to give him a lot of credit. You know, he's saying, like, he's talking about the snowflake generation, and he's a little bit forgiving of them. He's going to give them some slack. Whereas, for me, I just, right now, I just can't see giving any slack, because to give slack, to give the benefit of the doubt, and I guess it might be on a case by case basis, but if I took them all into one basket, how can you acquiesce to the snowflake generation? Because their whole thing is that if you don't agree with them, even if what they're saying is scientifically can be proven wrong, biologically be proven wrong, mathematically it can be proven wrong, scientifically it can be proven wrong, they won't agree with it. They'll say that doesn't matter. That's how topsy-turvy the world has become. And you see these snowflakes, you see these millennials, these Gen Zers that are out there screaming and shouting and making noise, and like the people who just stopped oil, these young people and older people too as well, but younger people mostly, going out on marches and parades for climate change just because everybody else is doing it. And then when you ask them and say, well, what about the cell phone you're using? What about the toilet you're using in your house? What about the air conditioner? What about your car that you're driving? What about, oh, that doesn't mean anything. But, we got to, I don't see how we can, give them the benefit of the doubt, or say that, you know what, we've got to be a little bit more easy on them. I don't agree with Douglas in that at all. Forgiveness? I don't think so. And then when you're talking about the people that know better, the elders, the people in power, the people in the establishment, the people in political parties, the people in government, and they know full well that the stuff that they're peddling is race baiting, race hating, race trading, eco-terrorism, transgenderism ideology that, until, like Douglas said, until yesterday, we all knew it wasn't that. But they now sidle up to that because that gives them additional what? People behind them. Power. Just by acquiescing to what they're saying. It's sort of like absorbing man, in the comics. They absorb that power from these people and they say, we'll be your leaders. We'll take you to the promised land. Just follow us here, little boy, little girl. Take these medicines. You want to change? You want to be a boy? You think you're a boy? You think you're a girl? Sure, no problem. We'll give you those drugs. Yeah, we'll experiment on you, but it's not experimentation. It's out of love. And Douglas says, when we look at the past now and we say, how in the world did those people do that? How could they have done that? We look at slavery. How did they do that back then? They're going to be looking at us and saying in the future, decades from now, centuries from now, what the hell were you guys doing with kids? You were giving them what? Lupron? You were giving them sex change hormonal drugs to change their bodies, change their hormonal levels? With what you knew at that time, it's not like you were in the dark ages. You had the information medically and scientifically, and yet you still did it. What the hell were you guys thinking? That's what. Is there going to be forgiveness then? Are they going to be unforgiving? Or are they going to look at us with that look of contempt that the people that perpetrated that should be looked upon in the annals of human history in the same vein, the same eyes, the same way as Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, all the evil things that people became? That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen with this whole thing in climatology, the Church of Climatology, the Church of Transgenderism, Church of Eco-terrorism, all of these things in the future when they judge us as to what was happening presently. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. We hope you like our content. If you do, subscribe to the channel. We'd love for you to do that. Like, share, and follow us. Y'all know what to do. Take a look at our other video links above and below. We'd love for your comments. Share with us. Tell us you like what I said, you didn't like what I said, you agree with Douglas, don't agree with Douglas. And my final thought is always, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.